unmuting. Can you unmute Dave Mincer? And we have 3 minutes per speaker.
He is unmuted.
Thank you. David, welcome. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I am back one last time to talk about Pena Boulevard again. After following this whole process, it's really clear that the decision to fund this expansion was fixed from the beginning, regardless of the level of community opposition or the number of plans the city has done that claim to prioritize modes of travel other than the automobile. It's clear that this was a decision that's been a long time made. For Denver residents who are concerned about climate change, about ozone pollution, and the epidemic of traffic deaths, the only consolation here is that the current administration, which has never lived up to the city's multimodal goals, is in its last days. It is, after talking to numerous candidates and watching the debates, it is near certain that the next mayor and the next city council will not sign off on a $277 million highway expansion within Denver's borders. It's a shame that the Sub-Regional Forum has decided to waste money on this dead-end highway project. I'm sure the Sub-Regional Forum members missed the time when the public was unaware of the board's existence and they could fund highway projects without having to address concerns about car dependency and climate. In 2020, the Sub-Regional Forum funded the $88 million reconstruction of I-25 in Broadway without consideration to the impact towards the adjacent neighborhoods. This project rightly generated years of intense neighborhood protest, while Dottie continued to assert that this project would improve pedestrian safety and decrease car trips and greenhouse gas emissions. Only 2 weeks ago did Nick come to the Dottie Advisory Board and acknowledge that this highway interchange project was from a different era that prioritized car traffic and high-speed volumes coming into and out of the neighborhood. And at the last moment, the city has been forced to redesign this project, which the Sub-Regional Forum had thrown so much money towards. Now we find that the Sub-Regional Forum is once again funding a massive highway construction project over the objections of Denver residents and against the climate goals of this city. We're repeating the same mistakes for 2 funding cycles in a row, and it's suggestive of a deep dysfunction and disconnect within this board. The Hancock administration is departing the city so unpopular because it has time and again put the concerns of special interests like the airport over the people of Denver and our environment. I'm asking once more to please break this cycle, this pattern, and listen to the people of Denver. Hold off on this project until the mobility study is complete, until the FAA has been asked about the A-line support, and just give it until the next cycle, which will allow these funds to be used towards much delayed bicycle and transit projects. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I was keeping a timer here. You were right at 3 minutes. Thank you. Next up is John Connor. John?
John is unmuted.
John, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. Yeah, I do want to agree with David on this. I won't have quite as much to say, but Denver itself is moving away from car dependency and from car infrastructure as its primary mode of transit. And I do agree that this expansion to Pena Boulevard not only is completely opposite and counter to that overall plan with addressing the needs of our climate and with getting people around more effectively. It also it's wrong-headed from the start to simply expand highways and expand roads and expect that's going to be a long-term solution to traffic. Traffic, as we know, is a result of cars being on the road, not necessarily that there are not enough lanes to hold them. Induced demand definitely tells us that if we build it, they will come. More people will drive, and we will see lowered and less effective transit and usage of the Denver A-line. That is something we really want to encourage. It is by far the best decision for our city and for our region and for our state. So I really think that that we really need to reconsider funding this highway and Pena Boulevard expansion, really just to stick to what's important to the people of Denver, which is making the city less car dependent and better aligned with our climate goals. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up is Alejandra Castaneda, and looks like you are unmuted. No, not yet. Now you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, please go
Okay,
ahead.
great. Thank you for having me here. My name is Alejandra Castaneda, and I live in North Denver with my daughter, Violeta. I'm here to voice my opposition to fund the addition of one managed motor vehicle lane on each side of Pena Boulevard. Of the 433 public comments the DRCOG received for Denver sponsor projects, 178 were about Pena Boulevard, and of those, 75% were writing in opposition to it. The project webpage on the airport's website states that improvements are needed, and adding these lanes is needed because to promote a shift to more sustainable transportation modes, enhance safety, reduce motor vehicle crashes, improve travel time reliability, prepare for an increase in passengers, and also to address equity and barriers to opportunity. We know, I mean, there's research, countless amounts of studies that adding lanes for motor vehicles is not the right answer to address any of these needs. We could be investing these public funds to expand service on the A line, even if there are rules and regulations that prevent us currently. We could fight to change those rules and regulations so we could expand service and also reduce the cost of the ticket to the airport. There's solid research that shows that to enhance safety and reduce crashes, the best thing we can do is to reduce the number of motor vehicles on the road. Curbing traffic and expanding the A-line services will also improve travel time reliability and prepare us better for an increase in passengers. Adding traffic lanes for motor vehicles will only increase our car dependency. And we know that car dependency and its associated costs disproportionately impact communities of colors, people with lower incomes, and those historically excluded from economic opportunities. I know that because I work with them and I am part of this community. This cost burden exists because American cities have been designed to require vehicle ownership to participate in social, economic, and political society. It's a requirement that is too much for our communities to bear. If we are truly concerned about equity and barriers to opportunity, then investing in public transit is our best option. Finally, others have spoken about the environment and sustainability, and a large body of research shows that road expansions, even with managed lanes, attract more drivers in the long run, which ultimately increases greenhouse gas emissions. Please don't fund a lane expansion on Pena Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandra. Next up is Amy Kenreich. Amy, you're being unmuted and you can start now. Go ahead.
Okay, I hope you can hear me because I'm on the side of South Broadway, so I have to yell a little bit above this traffic noise.
Thank you. Yes,
right
we
now
hear you.
Okay, great. I represented the community in West Washington Park when we were working with the city to try to get pedestrian and bicycle improvements for the I-25 and Broadway project. I'm here today to let you know that I oppose the lane expansion on Pena Boulevard. And I really hope that we don't make the same mistakes that we made with the I-25 and Broadway project. Let me tell you, it was a full-time job for me and a couple of other neighborhood representatives try to even understand how the project came to be and figure out the best way to advocate for basic dignity, walking to our transit station across 19 lanes of traffic. It was unacceptable. And what I realized is it came down to the tip application. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it was really hurtful that Dr. Cog funded that project and couldn't see that the tip application, it just was borderline untruthful. It sold the project as a multimodal project that's going to improve the conditions for pedestrians and bicyclists, and it simply wasn't true. When I look through the application for Pena Boulevard, I see a lot of the same stuff going on. I feel like it's misleading, intentional or not. I hope that you guys understand that adding lanes and accommodating drivers is not the direction our city needs to go. That's not going to solve, it's not going to help us reach Vision Zero or solve our environmental problems. I oppose the Pena Boulevard project. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Next speaker is Richard Bamber. Richard, you are unmuted as of now. Go ahead, Richard. Richard Bamber. I cannot hear you if you are speaking, Richard. Justin, can you hear him? No.
No, and I can confirm it's not
Okay.
on mute. So
Richard, I don't know if you can hear me. You are unmuted, but we cannot hear you. Would you, if you can, would you mind?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, now we can.
Yep.
Okay.
I do apologize.
Right,
Right, sorry.
I'll start your clock again. Go ahead, Richard.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Okay, I mean, it's about Pena Boulevard. So the first thing is the airport has massively jumped the gun on this. Okay, they've set this scheme up as a roadway widening project. They are they're currently in the carrying out a Pena Boulevard Transportation and Mobility Master Plan study. Okay, we haven't seen any results, yet they've already gone to the FAA and set up a funding deal, working out with a 73-27% split. And this has been done under traffic modeling and road use. Okay. There is nothing in the FAA guidance documents that says the FAA cannot contribute to transit improvements A-line capacity. Indeed, if we did do one of the more obvious A-line capacity improvement projects, such as double tracking between 61st and Pena Station and the airport, that would be 100% funded by, contributed by the FAA, because all the passengers on that would be going to the airport on airport use. One of the things I've seen is HOV lanes could be used by buses. Well, the first thing is, if you're going to add extra bus service into the airport, you don't generally do it along the corridor where we've got high functioning rail service. If you're going to add bus service and open up access by public transit to the airport, you'd focus on Boulder, Brighton, North Denver, which is coming down E470. You'd focus on eastern parts of Aurora down to Parker, which is south on E470. And then you'd focus on local bus service coming out of Green Valley Ranch, accessing via Tower Road and maybe Jackson Gap. Okay. One of the other arguments I've seen is RTD eco passes. RTD, as we know, is having a fare study. The proposed monthly pass will be $88 for an airport worker. And we're still sort of putting it as a point that there is an eco pass and we can't save people $88 a month. Okay, let's compare that to forced auto ownership. That's hundreds of dollars a month. It's almost a diversionary argument. Basically, you should be able, the problems with Green Valley Ranch is it's been developed as an auto-centric neighborhood which fosters car dependency. A family where one parent works at the airport should be able to commute on public transit to that job and only own one car. That's what really will make the difference to people's budgets. When you widen a road, the traffic has to go somewhere. The one road that's completely underused in this area is E470. And it's because it's a toll road. Where RTD gets a lot of pressure to reduce the fares to the airport, nobody's on at E470 Highway Authority to give free tolls. That is a solution here as well, okay? It needs to be looked into. What I would say is, overall, there is an opportunity to do something properly groundbreaking here. Okay, and actually follow all our Denver moves, transit plans, follow climate goals, and reduce car dependency. Okay, this plan as submitted is yet more of the same failed policy. I urge you to reject its funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard, and nice to hear from you. Richard and I worked together on the A-line when I was at RTD. Next up is James Flatham. James, you are unmuted now. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is James Flatham. I'd like to re-up what Richard and the fellow speakers on this call have said. Really just looking to try to add some context as why this plan is being pushed forward now, while there are key studies that are outstanding that are going to perhaps speak to better and higher uses of cash, especially meaningful expansions in capacity for ground transportation that would partially be funded by the FAA as well. So Pena Boulevard, as I recall, had a substantial rebuild project just over 10 years ago. So one of the things that confuses me, obviously it's not the same thing as building new lanes, but one of the things that we're looking at is it's totally unsustainable to expect that every 10 to 15 years, the city is going to have to fund additional lanes on Pena Boulevard as DIA continues to grow, as we all know it will. So our view, especially if we're going to take our climate goals seriously that the city's made, especially with Vision Zero, right, which as we've engaged on this plan, several of the years since 2019, we've seen traffic deaths increase, not decrease, that there is absolutely better and higher uses of cash, and that we urge the city of Denver to at least wait upon having better information to make a smarter decision on how best to use infrastructure expansion dollars. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, James. Next speaker is Kenyon Moon. Kenyon, you are being unmuted and you can start now. Go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon and thank you for having me. I am a Denver area resident as well and wanted to add, I heard all these people talking about Pena, and I wanted to add my brief experience having worked at the airport. I've seen and heard some comments where people say things like, well, people who work at the airport have to be able to get there. And when I worked there for, it was 2.5 years maybe, the gas I would spend driving and the money I would spend on maintaining my car were often more expensive than the bus ticket to get there. This was before the A line was put in. Of course, if you get out there and you park, then you have to walk in. You spend time when you get home looking for parking, unless you have parking in your apartment complex. Things like that. It's not a particularly different amount of time or energy to get to the airport at the moment by transit. If traffic is heavy, now if traffic is light, that obviously changes. I just wanted to encourage us to get away from saying, oh, but the people who make minimum wage have to be able to drive out there. No, we need opportunities to get there by every means available to us. And often that is the bus or the train. And it can be practical. It can compete with driving. It can be a consistent cost. It can be a consistent amount of time rather than the very variable things that come with driving. I would encourage the airport to ask, or you or whoever it is that does the work, to ask the FAA, since it is a direct train to the airport, if they can put in some money to that and offer the special fare that we've talked about that should not take years to sort out, and or make EcoPass available to employers who have staff at the airport. The problem on Pena is not, in my opinion, that there's not enough travel lanes. The problem is that there are bottlenecks which have nothing to do with travel lanes. Things like the interchange at 225 in Chambers. Things like the parking at the airport has limited capacity. Things like Jackson Gap or 56th, where cars back up onto Pena. None of those will be resolved by adding a travel lane. The problem lies elsewhere, and of course people will continue to use cars to get to the airport. I'm not arguing we take cars away, but that we improve the alternatives to get there. There is demand for those kinds of things, and I think it's reasonable that we pursue all of those alternatives before we just slap down another travel lane. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I appreciate that, Kenyon. I see no other hands raised, at least new hands raised. So is there anyone else who would like to offer public comment? I see Pete Winterscheidt.
Yeah. So I just wanted to echo more or less everyone else's comments. As somebody who lives now in Sloan's Lake, but used to be in the Highlands neighborhood, the A line and I-70 for me to get out to the airport are always competing for me and my family to decide which one makes more sense. And frequently the issue is not traffic on Pena or anything like that. My family would actually much rather prefer to take the A line whenever possible, but it's just so much more cost effective to drive in the current scenario. And I fear that by widening Pena, we're going to continue to encourage more drivers to speed more rapidly on Pena out to the airport, and we're going to hurt future transit riders and things like that, which I feel like people have very eloquently noted, you know, the car dependencies and induced demand and things of that nature. But the issue for me there just becomes, you know, for me and my family, we deal with the pollution, the side effects of all of these cars in our neighborhoods. And I know we're not even the worst impacted by these sorts of knock-on effects, but it just seems like this is a very short-term solution. It doesn't seem particularly complete to me. You know, the lane expansions are for perhaps limited areas. They don't seem like they're going to address much other than just move traffic jams closer to the airport. And ultimately, I feel like these funds would be far better used or attempted to use. It sounds like we haven't really asked the FAA whether or not we can use them on the A line for public transit. So yeah, I'd encourage a no vote on this.
Thank you, Pete. Is there anyone else who would like to offer public comment? Looking at the list here. Okay, seeing none, we will move to the next item of business in the as well. With no other comments, let's all in favor. It's Nicholas, Josh, and me. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. So we will advance these to the Dr. Cog board.